All right, today we're going to do something really cool. We're going to connect two of the most famous opening lines in, well, all of literature, the very first page of Genesis and the first page of the Gospel of John. And as you're about to see, John isn't just starting another story. He's intentionally doing what you might call a cosmic remix of the entire story of creation.
I mean, it's a fascinating question, right? Think about it. Matthew and Luke, they start with the familiar stuff, genealogies, a manger scene. Mark, he just jumps right into Jesus' adult ministry. But John? Whoa. He pulls the camera all the way back. I mean, we're talking before time itself. So why? Why on earth would he start there?
Well, it's because John is intentionally setting up a totally different kind of story. You know, one scholar put it perfectly. They said his opening is stylistically simple yet symbolically dense. He's not just giving us a biography of a historical figure. No, he's framing this person's arrival as an event that is just as significant, just as world-altering as the creation of the universe itself.
So to really see how he pulls this off, we kind of need to put on our detective hats. Because John has left this amazing trail of clues, these ancient echoes that deliberately point us right back to Genesis chapter 1. So come on, let's start uncovering them one by one.
Okay, clue number 1. This one's the most obvious of them all. Seriously, you can't miss it.
Just look at that. The parallel is absolutely unmistakable. In the beginning. John literally grabs the exact opening phrase of the entire Bible. It's like he's grabbing you by the shoulders and saying, hey, pay attention. That story you think you know, it's starting over right here, right now.
Okay, so that's clue 1. Now for our next clue. It's all about John's main character, if you will, the Word. And look, this is not some random title he just picked out of a hat. It's a direct callback to how God actually creates everything back in Genesis.
So think back to Genesis 1. How does creation happen? Does God get his hands dirty? No, he speaks. He says, let there be light, and boom, there is light. God's speech is his creative power. So John takes this incredible concept, God's powerful world-making speech, and he does something mind-blowing. He says, that's not just an action, that is a person.
And this is where we get to that famous Greek term John uses, logos. Now, it translates as word, but oh, it is so much more than that. For John, the logos is the pre-existent Christ. He's the ultimate personal self-expression of God. Think of it this way, it's not just a message from God, it's God revealing his very self.
All right, let's move on to our next clue, because you can really see how this is all starting to build. After the initial acts of creation, Genesis fills the world with something absolutely essential, and it's a theme John immediately picks up on.
So in Genesis, God's brand new creation is just teeming with living creatures, right? Life is the result of his creative work. John grabs this idea and makes this absolutely breathtaking claim. He says that the very source code of life itself is contained in the Word, that he is the source of all life.
And that leads us to our final and maybe the most powerful thematic clue of all. We're talking about the first great struggle in the entire Bible, a cosmic battle that John places right at the heart of his entire gospel. I mean, the connection here is just so powerful. Genesis kicks off with this formless, empty darkness. And what is God's very first creative act? To speak light into existence. So John takes that physical reality from page 1 and turns it into the central metaphor for his entire story. The Word arrives as a brilliant light, shining into a deep spiritual darkness.
Okay, so let's just step back for a second. When you put all these clues together, the opening line, the Word, the theme of life, and now light versus darkness, the first layer of what John is doing becomes crystal clear.
And John leaves absolutely zero room for doubt here. He hits us with a 1-2 punch. First, the positive statement, all things were made through the Word. Then he flips it for the negative statement, nothing that was made without him. It's this perfect airtight argument identifying Jesus, the Word, as the Creator. But, and this is a big but, that's not his final point. You see, this isn't just a history lesson. John isn't just looking backwards. All of these incredible echoes of the original creation, they're all there to tell us about the Word's mission now. It's not just about what he did back then, it's about what he has come to do today. And this brings us to the absolute core of it all. John is building on this foundation, the story of creation, to teach us something brand new. The Word didn't just show up to remind everyone, hey, I created the world. No, he came to renew it.
Just let that sink in for a moment. This is the big reveal. The whole reason for echoing Genesis 1 is to frame Jesus' mission as a new creation. He has come to fix what's broken, to bring light back into the darkness.
And when you see it this way, suddenly the whole arc of the Bible just clicks into place. You have Genesis 1, the perfect original creation. But then, Genesis 3, darkness enters the story. John 1, that's the pivotal moment. It's the turning point. The Creator himself stepping back into his creation as the light to begin the long work of renewal. A project that, by the way, finds its ultimate conclusion way at the end, in the promise of a new heaven and a new earth.
So what's the big deal? Why does any of this matter? Why frame the story of Jesus in such a massive, cosmic, universal way? Well, because it completely changes how we understand his mission.
When you look at the story through this new creation lens, you realize the gospel isn't just a personal rescue plan for individuals, it's a cosmic restoration project for everything. The story of Jesus doesn't begin in a manger, it begins in Genesis 1. And that primal struggle we all feel between light and darkness, John says that's rooted in the very fabric of creation itself.
And that leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. If the arrival of the Word was really the first step in renewing and recreating the entire cosmos, not just saving individual souls, then what does that mean for us? How does that change the way we see our purpose, our work, and the future of the very world around us today? It's a huge question, all born from one incredible cosmic remix.